Welcome back into yet another FFPC Main Event live draft coverage. I'm your host, Aiden LaCorey, stumbling over my own last name already. Joining me as always, Dave Tripoli. Terp, draft is underway. We only got two more of these Sunday main event coverages.
Crazy. I mean, we have two left next Sunday. Actually, we have this one and then one more, right?
No, I'm saying next Sunday is our last one.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy when we first started these. Like now Vegas is here. It's less than 10, 11 days left. I mean, it's insane depending on when you're getting out there. Drafting season is this week is going to be crazy. You know, all of us who will be doing a ton of drafts, whether it's Fantasy Pros, the main event, best ball, and all the other contests, super flex. It's going to be a wacky week, multiple drafts a day. I think there's one draft that one day I think I have 5 drafts scheduled. I didn't tell my wife that, but it's going to be an interesting day.
No, it's gonna be hectic for the next couple of weeks. Just so for the viewers who are in, I'm sure I'll repeat it multiple times. We have obviously tonight's show. Tuesday we have a Fantasy Pros. Next Sunday is main event. Not this Tuesday, but next Tuesday is another Fantasy Pros, and then me and Terp live from Las Vegas will be covering the $10,000 entry. I believe that's Thursday, September 7th at 3:30 p.m.
3:30 Eastern time, 12:30 obviously Pacific.
That's going to be
that'll be an interesting one. Last year we had some choice words to say about a certain team that we didn't like at all, and that team made the playoffs and won it all. So just shows you sometimes like
we don't know anything
in those confined leagues, like it can get a little wacky, and you just need a little luck on your side.
And I think we mentioned on that stream, these guys are paying $10,000 to enter this league. They know what they're doing, even if sometimes maybe we think they don't. They do. Terp, this draft is well underway. We haven't really seen anything too crazy. So I want to start you off with a bit of news. It was a stake through your heart this week. Jerry Jeudy goes down with a hamstring injury.
Not great. Not going to lie.
The timeline is not even conclusive. It's several weeks. That feels like maybe like a week 4 to 6 he returns. Obviously, you're not feeling good. The question is, where are you drafting Jerry Jeudy now with this uncertainty?
It's so hard. I mean, the injury is obviously, it sounds like a grade 2, which is obviously not as serious as, some of the ones you've seen over the years. But also, it's not just like a Cooper Kupp issue when he was a grade 1, nothing major. But I mean, it just sucks, man. I mean, all these drafts that we've all done early, Jerry Jeudy's 4th round draft pick, 3rd round draft pick in some drafts, some monsters that you drafted, and you have Jeudy. It makes all sense. I think I'm 21% Jerry Jeudy. So it's definitely a kick in the wrong parts when I saw the news. I'm hoping he's back by week 3, week 4. If he comes back earlier, great. I don't want him to rush back and obviously re-aggravate everything, because he's definitely somebody that I'm expecting, big things out of this year. Everything just lined up perfectly. So we'll see. Hopefully now you're asking where I draft him. He's going to probably get drafted too high. I mean, my main events, like we just talked about before we went on the show, all my leagues start pretty much this week. That's pretty much when I do most of my main events. It's always what I've done. So Jerry Jeudy, will I draft him? It's possible, but he's not going to be a major target because he's probably going to get pushed up by somebody who just likes him and one of these 1 or 12 teams who want to get to him before, he falls too much. So it's sad because a player that I love the most, but I don't know if he's going to make it on many of my main event teams unless he just plummets down the board.
As you said, though, the timeline, it could be a pathway to who's only missing a couple of weeks, but there's also that pathway of a pupless. It's a lot of uncertainty in the air related to Jerry Jeudy. There's a lot of big news, obviously, with Josh Jacobs coming back this week. I think we're going to cover that, when he gets drafted. I think you tweeted out your intrigued. Your top thing for this draft is you're really intrigued to see where Josh Jacobs falls.
And, I saw he went in a main event. I think it was last night in the mid-second round, like right around this spot.
Yeah,
which is where I think he's going to settle. Whether it's deserving or not, we can debate that, but that is pretty much where he's going to go. And we're still waiting the Jonathan Taylor news. And if that news breaks, like I said, Tuesday, I think they gave the deadline. If he's, let's just say, a Miami Dolphin on Tuesday, I mean, all these drafts are going to go on this week. It's a whole different dynamic. It's just, all these guys drafting well before this news came out might have got some value on these guys, that these guys are going to move up, that other guys are going to fall the value. So it'll definitely be a wild week. I'll tell you that.
So when Jacobs gets drafted, I'm going to have another question for you, but I think I want to say friend of the program who's appeared on multiple of our shows, Austin Martin, had a tweet that I found interesting that I want to ask you about. And I don't quote me on that. That was Austin, but he essentially tweeted out saying it would be hard to take Josh Jacobs where he's going to end up settling, knowing there's so many people in these contests with late round 4 Josh Jacobs shares. Now, do you feel as though when you start drafting, you can't think about that? Or do you factor that in as there's teams with way better Josh Jacobs builds just as a product of them getting such a discount?
A lot of it depends on how many teams you have. I mean, if you're a one, maybe 2 main event guy, draft whoever you like. I mean, it doesn't matter where guys got Josh Jacobs. But if you're, like Austin, has multiple main events, I would definitely say it's tough because I'm going to guess he probably has some Josh Jacobs bags early in the 4th round. So to push him all the way up in the 2nd round, it really doesn't make any sense because, like I said, some guys are going to fall down value-wise. Some guys are going to drop that shouldn't drop. Like we've seen Jalen Waddle move to like a 3rd round pick in some of these. Guys that realistically he's been banged up a little bit in preseason. We don't really know what's going on, but all the coaches are giving you the coach speak that everything's going to be good, but he's fallen. Derrick Henry's fallen. Calvin Ridley's moving. I mean, Devonta Smith has gone anywhere between the mid-2nd round to the beginning of the 3rd round. So it gets really crazy in these drafts because all these different dynamics this week. I mean, we've seen it over the years of just the week or so before the season starts and all the different moving parts. This year is going to be even more crazy. Josh Jacobs signing, Jonathan Taylor, all these dominoes that are falling. Like there's a lot of unknown that is still out there, and you can get yourself in a lot of trouble if you don't take advantage of it.
The famous Jay in the chat saying he's seen Josh Jacobs get drafted in the 2nd round again. Still no one behind him as a threat, and it's a good point because I believe there's Amir White. I think there was obviously that buzz. He got pushed up, but still, as you said, no real threat to him. But looking at the ADP is where I'm trying to get to is Josh Jacobs the last 2 days in the main event. So still adjusting a bit for the news, but he's pretty much been drafted in the early 3rd. But as we said, the 206 was the earliest he's been drafted. You mentioned Ridley moving up. One kind of viral yesterday in the fantasy kind of Twitterverse, but 202 in a main event. And hey, it sounds crazy, but it's just one of those. He's at the rate it's going. He's not coming back to you at the 311.
Nope,
so
no
if you're that much of a believer in Ridley, and maybe as you said, you have 1, maybe 2, it's go get your guy time, and you're taking Ridley there. But Terp, off the top of your head, has anyone maybe had? Some people have risen higher by round number, like if you're actually adding it up. But in terms of kind of the capital, when this contest first opened up, looking even at the Fantasy Pros, per 5th round, I think was where he's at, and now he's kind of consistently getting late 2nd. I'd say he's probably been the biggest mover of this year's season.
He's definitely getting steamed, and it's justifiable. I mean, you're seeing all the positive. Trevor Lawrence seems to be feeding him the rock in the preseason. Nothing negative about it. He had that minor toe injury that scared some people away for a little bit, but he's skyrocketing up draft boards. And is it warranted? I mean, he's definitely a guy that I've been trying to do more, get more of an understanding of. Am I wrong by my Christian Kirk, Calvin Ridley shouldn't be that far apart? It looks like I might be as of now. I know it's the preseason. I'm still standing with, I think their gap is too big because the gap's even getting bigger now. But I mean, Calvin Ridley is a mega talented player. I mean, it seems like the perfect storm. But we thought somebody like Courtland Sutton was the perfect storm last year. And, obviously they're 2 different players, 2 different talents, but you could get yourself in trouble by steaming them up too much. Like if you're at the end of the 1st round, at the end of the 2nd round, and all these other top, Olaves, the Waddles, the Smith, the Adams, the Wilsons aren't there, he is probably the best of the bunch. But it just comes down to, like you said, there's some 4th round Ridleys, there's some late 3rd round Ridleys. If you're drafting one team, go get your guys. But these guys who are 10, 12, 15 main events, you can't push them up that much. At least I can't.
We don't know what Team 4 is about to do here, but a little bit surprised that Jacobs hasn't gone. Obviously, we've been talking about him kind of a lot the last 2 rounds. I admittedly expected him to kind of gone by now. A little bit surprised or no?
Very surprised. I mean, I'm shocked he's still there. We still have Jalen Hurts still there. We still have Patrick Mahomes still there.
Yeah.
The Kelsey team passed on Mahomes, which is extremely rare, in these main events. That's a very nice start with Kupp, Smith,
That's
and
about to
Hurts.
say, teams. That is a phenomenal start for Team 6.
That is exactly how you draw it up, and I'm going to guess they bet that Devonta Smith wouldn't make it all the way back to them. So it just comes down to these main events are spending a lot of money, and some people take shots, like with Devonta Smith kind of getting pushed up a little bit in this draft, but it worked out that the Hurts fell to him. So, that drafter has to be excited with how it started. It doesn't always work out that way, but Josh Allen being the first quarterback taken is not something that's been popular in these. But Patrick Mahomes still on the board, and a lot of teams right now are probably sitting like, we can get different because Patrick Mahomes doesn't fall this far. I would love to know what his main. Well, you have Fantasy Mojo up?
I do.
What's the farthest Patrick Mahomes has fell in one of these main events? It has to be this one.
3-9.
Oh, wow.
Last 2 days, 3-9. Some drafts get wonky. It's kind of simple as that. The 3 guys you listed go in order. Real quick question I do want to cover in the draft. Brad Bravado, how can FFPC employees draft in the events? We can't. That's the answer. Terp just joins
not
us
an
for coverage.
Employee.
Not an employee at all. He is a friend of the
just
program.
Here to make fun of your team.
That is true. But me as an employee cannot draft in the FFPC events. I can only recommend that people do. Terp, Josh Jacobs goes at the 307, a little later than we expected. But my question is, and the discourse on Twitter after when you saw the movement up was, this was always going to be the outcome, right? And I don't want it to sound as though you're hating on people too much. And because I understand there's a baked-in uncertainty when some guys hold the game. But everyone had said, like, he's going to come back. You've been vocal about all of them. They're going to have to play unless they want to lose millions of dollars by just sitting out every game. So they're going to play. Now, there is uncertainty. I think people have mentioned on the program we've had, he gets hurt. There's less incentive to come back. They're all kind of on one-year contracts. There may be a little bit of some distrust with the team. Who knows? But the point is, Josh Jacobs, this was always the end game. It was just kind of a matter of when. He comes back with 2 weeks left till the season. Essentially, the point is his ADP probably should not have slipped as much as it did.
It shouldn't. It really shouldn't have. People were just scared. Like, preseason, we see it every year. Guys falling down draft boards and then when the news hits, we saw all those Saquon Barkley, third round shares. Saquon Barkley's now a first round pick. That's why, people always say the benefits of drafting, all over the place. Saquon Barkley, you could have got him in the third round of a lot of drafts for that, short window. Same thing with Josh Jacobs. You can get some fourth round shares. So it makes things a lot more interesting. He should have never fell that far. I'm surprised he fell that far tonight. But it's definitely something to look at, when you look at your portfolio and when it comes down to a guy like Josh Jacobs, like, look at last year. He was just an absolute monster, and he got a little bit of a raise, but nothing long-term. So it seems as this, they're just going to feed him again and run him into the ground. So we'll see. But, Josh Jacobs will start steaming up draft boards, and, probably will get to a point where he's just a little uncomfortable for guys who enter, a lot of main events.
Love Stars in the chat actually makes a really good point, Terp, kind of bouncing back on something we said when he was saying that all those teams that have Jefferson and Hurts and Smith, which is kind of a popular start out of that one spot, are way better than Kupp, Smith, and Hurts. He's asking us how we said it was phenomenal. I think it was more of, at least can't speak for you, Terp, but I'm viewing it more as, I never thought, if you're drafting Devonta there, I don't think you're ever expecting Hurts to come back based on where he's been drafted. So in that respect, it's kind of like, that is an unexpected stack to get. But absolutely agree with you that there's a lot of Hurts teams paired with Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, with a Smith and Hurts combination. I've seen a couple of crazy ones with AJ Brown and Smith. Like the team you mentioned, they reach on AJ Brown. There's been a couple that have been
popping up that, like, people that have been moving. We said this a bunch of times. Teams have been moving AJ Brown up to like the fifth or sixth pick, and then getting Smith, and then just hoping and praying and it working out to get Hurts. That's a very, very unlikely stack that if you can get it, with the small target share that's going around to 3 guys really in Philadelphia, it could be obviously $1 million winning. And people say, like, that we just look at each league one by one, because at the end of the day, you have to win your league to get these $1 million shots. Mm-hmm. And the leagues all pay great prizes. We're not talking about like, rinky dink, getting your money back type of situation. You could be making some good money and then having a chance at $1 million. So all these leagues, we just try to figure out, how do I get out of my league? Because once you get out of your league, then you're fighting for some real life-changing money. But you got to get there first.
And there's something to be said, though, too. People in the chat are kind of talking about it. We've mentioned early on in the coverage. I think we just talked about it so much early. We haven't talked about it as much late. And also the hamstring injury has kind of dwelled the discussion about him. But Cooper Kupp was on pace to be the wide receiver 1 over Justin Jefferson last year. Yeah. So, I mean, there's something said that there is more than one avenue which he is the wide receiver 1 this year. He is a beast when healthy. It's just, for me, I think I talked about, I was super high on him. He's probably my wide receiver 1 months ago out of everything. But then the hamstring injury paired with he was banged up and he's getting up there. There is, I think, a little bit slight concern about his body holding up. So our question was in the chat for you from I'm Grump, and we're back to Jonathan Taylor because you kind of mentioned him. What do you think about him in terms of games played? Do you think he gets to that 15 to 17 games played number, or do you think it's less than that? It's hard to predict without injury, but just the uncertainty surrounding him. Where are you at on Jonathan Taylor?
The issue with Jonathan Taylor is the same issue there is with all these other guys. They all want to get paid. The only way you get paid is you're out there on the field producing. And he could try to play this hardball and, try to hold out to get to a team he wants to get to, but that's not going to do anything but hurt himself because, I keep hearing the Dolphins name. That's a popular name and seems like the leader in the clubhouse. But it has to make sense for the Dolphins because they know they're probably just bidding against themselves. So are the Colts ready to just give him away, or can they figure out a way to mend fences and get him back into camp? It's a tough spot because he's not going to get big money no matter what he does with the running back market. So the only way that he can maybe, get some team who's just, with a quarterback on a rookie contract type of situation that might want to take a shot, it just doesn't make any sense for him to leave the Colts. I'm sorry. I know most people are going to be like, yeah, go somewhere else and, get that bag, but that bag ain't happening. He's not getting paid. Tua's going to be coming up for money soon. It'll definitely be interesting to see where he goes, but I still say he stays in Indianapolis.
Terp, 4th round pick. You've been very vocal about it. I think Tank Bigsby's real. I'm going to say it. That I know it's the week 3 of the preseason. The usage is up to close to 40% now. ETN was still in, but it's just, I think that's going to be a running back by committee. I'm honestly surprised he's still going in the 4th round. He's a guy who I'm kind of dropping on my boards. You're the ultimate ETN bandwagon leader. You've been pretty vocal. You don't think Bigsby is going to impact ETN too much. I think you might have mentioned to me once you're starting to kind of get a little worried. Was this week 3 of the preseason a final straw, or where are you at on ETN and then Tank Bigsby?
I'm not going to sit here and say I'm not worried. I've said it on the show. I love Travis Etienne. I love him as a player. But there are some, small red flags that are there. And there's a lot of hype surrounding Bigsby. Do I think that hype's warranted? I don't know. I think he's a good player. I don't think he's special in any way. I still think Etienne is still the guy, but he's not a guy that I've owned a ton of. I just think that Bigsby is just cheaper, and that's why I like him. I think he's just going to be annoying enough to where if Etienne, I know he scored a goal line touchdown, which I love. If he falls to the right spot and I don't like what's on the board, he will definitely be a guy that I target. Mm-hmm. Is he going to be somebody that I go out of my way to target in this 4th round, which, we talked about a bunch of these guys that I like better? I don't think so. It's just a muddy water type of situation that I don't see the path like with Josh Jacobs last year. Like you try to find this year's Josh Jacobs. What's the path? Tank Bigsby, annoying. I don't know. ETN, he's a guy that I love as a player. I still think he's going to be pretty solid this year. He would need to slip somewhere in the late 4th, early 5th for me to probably take him. And that's really hard for me to say right now because I love the guy.
Terp, we got a lot of questions in the chat. I'm going to try and get to all of them. First off, from D-Dance, I can answer this one, Turk. I'm planning on taking Tyreek at the 101. According to industry, ADP is going 4-5, but I really feel he can finish higher than Justin Jefferson Chase. Both of our, I can speak for me and Terp right here. I think me and Terp have had Tyreek Hill. There's like a group of, I've always said, 4 to 5 guys who I could see any of them go 1, and I would not blink an eye. And Tyreek is absolutely in there. As I said at the start of the show when Brad Bravado asked, I can't draft in the FFPC, which means sometimes my home league is still the most important league to me. I have 1st overall pick. I'm taking Tyreek Hill. I'm all in on that offense.
Get your guy.
It's all reliant on Tua staying healthy. He's taken preventative steps with the jiu-jitsu training to land better. But I'm fully in on that offense. It was explosive when when Tua was healthy. It's really just Tua. But Tyreek, he said, I think he leads the league in receiving yards. No, I'm all in. I think that's more than fine. As you said, 4th, 5th. It's not a crazy reach. By no means is it absurd. People in the chat are commenting as well. Go get your guy. Terp, specific question for you though. That was my answer. I think it covers for both of us. I love Tyreek at the 101.
Said perfectly. There's 6 guys that can go number 1. If you take any one of them, I have no issues whatsoever. And there's probably a couple other guys that if you took them, I don't really think there's anybody in the first round that, outside of like Nick Chubb maybe or Barkley, that I would say if you took number 1, you're crazy. So,
yeah,
they're not coming back. Go get your guy. If you love Stephon Diggs and you think he's going to be the wide receiver 1, take him. Like the ADP thing, throw it out the window. We're all playing for a lot of money, whether it's your home league. If somebody laughs at you, you'll be laughing at them when you're taking it to the bank if you're right. So go get your guy.
Terp, question for you. Another bit of recent news that we didn't cover was Rich Bill. You asked, what do you think about Strong going to Cleveland? Pierre Strong traded to Cleveland today. Do you think he does anything there, or does Ford come back and Strong is just depth? Or is this a Ford and Strong both you're not in on and you just think this is Nick Chubb's show?
I mean, it's definitely a Nick Chubb show, but I think Strong's going to be especially early in the season, the questions surrounding Ford. Who is Jerome Ford? Like, obviously, he's a guy that was getting steamed up in drafts, for a while there because he was the only guy. But, like, what do we know about him? What has he shown you that makes you think that when he comes back, he's going to be the guy? I think Pierre Strong's the guy. I think he's a guy that for all the, the guys who drafted a ton of them, and I know a ton of guys that drafted a ton of Pierre Strong thinking he was going to be Stevenson's backup. And we're really upset when they signed Zeke. But now,
feeling good now.
It's a great, great spot for him. I mean, he's going to get some work. He's going to get some pass catching work because I still don't believe Chubb's going to be the guy catching the ball. So I love this for Pierre Strong. He's a guy that I'll be probably moving up more. I feel like he's going to be the guy. And like I said, Jerome Ford, what do we know? We don't know anything about the guy. He's a camp darling that got hurt. And then when he comes back, what makes you think he's going to get a team like the Browns, who are going to be contending, trying to make the playoffs, are going to be like, oh, let's get Jerome Ford some touches. Unless something happens to Nick Chubb, I don't see that happening. To me, Jerome Ford will be going undrafted a lot coming out.
Real quick, back to the ETN conversation. Does Big B's goal line fumble concern you? It's not great, but I mean, if you're going to do it on any team, it's the one with Travis Etienne, who I believe led the league in fumbles. I don't know about fumbles lost, but led the league in fumbles put on the ground last year. So his main competitor is not someone who's been pristine in that category. So it kind of worries me less in that regards. Terp, there was a bunch of questions. I'm going to try and get to all of them, as I said. Let me try and find, there was one more off the top of my head here. Is the hype real around Rachaad White and Pacheco as possibly being top 10 running backs at a 6th and a 7th round cost? I think for me, Rachaad White more than Pacheco. I'm not seeing Pacheco as finishing as a top 10 back, especially with the way Andy Reid uses his running backs. But Rachaad White, I think there is a path there. Although, as I said last year, Sean Tucker does worry me a bit as a guy who did believe in Rachaad White.
I agree with what you're saying. I think if it's anybody, it's White. It's not Pacheco. The White thing is just, he's a guy that I wasn't on a ton early. I've been adding him a little bit just to get some exposure at the right price. Is he a guy that I'm going to go out of my way to target? No. If it's a 0 RB build, then probably I'll target it more. He has to catch a ton of passes. If he doesn't catch a ton of passes, he will not pay off his value. And I think that's as clear as day. I mean, we obviously saw the news early today. Ryan Jensen out for the year. Probably his career is over.
Yeah.
One of the best centers in football. Mm-hmm. That's a big loss. Leader of that offensive line. And that offensive line is tending to get injured all the time. And we're not talking about Tom Brady back there anymore that can just, figure it out. I think Baker is very average, below average. And I don't see there being, people are saying he's the Geno Smith of this year. I don't see it. I don't know where you're looking because I don't see it. And if it happens, hey, it happens. Nobody saw Geno Smith last year. Nobody saw Josh Jacobs last year. Everybody tried to come out and say they did, but that was as fluky as you're going to find. And I just don't think that Pacheco is definitely a guy that I just think there's going to be a bunch of guys, whether it's CEH, whether it's McKinnon, whether it's Prince, whether it's adding somebody, I don't think they're ever going to be a team that just hands the ball to Pacheco and, he does not catch the ball a lot. So I'm going to say none of the above out of the top two, out of either of them.
I mean, you said no one believed in Josh Jacobs. Well, Terp, the guy in the $10,000 buy-in league who took Josh Jacobs in the second round, but we were like, or maybe it was even the third, and we were like, what?
He called him an idiot on live, and
he believed in. Yeah, no, we didn't. We weren't that rude because we're like we both said like these guys are paying.
Maybe not an idiot. I think we had a lot of eye rolling, and
we had a moment where we were like, because Josh Jacobs last year was going the 7th round.
Yeah,
seventh round.
It was ugly. Like he was a guy that like you look at like the running back dead zone and all of that. They talked about it last year. He was a guy that most guys weren't even considering in that dead zone. Like it wasn't even a question. People were taking David Montgomery and all those other bums, and Josh Jacobs was a league winner. I mean, it's crazy how these things work out. That's why it's if you see something in Josh Jacobs and he falls to the right spot, and you find a guy like him this year, you got to take some shots because they're the ones that will win you $1 million.
The one last thing on Rachaad White, bouncing back to that too, is you mentioned the O-line. Obviously, the injuries, they were banged up last year. They struggled last year. And Rachaad White, as talented as I do think he is, and I was very high on him coming out of Arizona State, great pass catcher, but he did struggle between the tackles last year. It wasn't
efficient at all.
It was not an efficient back. So there's wariness there. Terp, you kind of mentioned the running back dead zone. There were some comments about Breece Hall going at the 502. I looked it up because I was like, wow, that is the latest he's gone in the main event the last couple of days is the not 8. That would be crazy. The 601. So it's not even the latest we've seen him. But Terp, this kind of range of running back I'm looking at: Mixon, Stevenson, Najee, Travis Etienne, Aaron Jones, Breece Hall, and then Kenneth Walker, which is you about looking at it as about the 3rd round through like the start of the 5th. Not great. For me, it sounds probably Aaron Jones and Ramondre are the two I believe in the most. But there's concerns with the who's people sharing the backfield with them. There's injury concerns. Just it's not a great range that I think I couldn't have predicted happening maybe a couple of months ago. But you're looking at now, like even look at the backs drafted in the 4th and 5th rounds, or even starting at Mixon at the 309 tonight. Every single guy who's been drafted through the end of that 5th. Just concerns like left and right. Just a weird spot to be drafting running backs in because
that's why some
of them are going to hit.
Popular. Yeah, that's why it's been so popular. Just pound receivers and tight ends and quarterbacks early because then you're seeing this 5th, 6th round where you can get. If I can start my team with 3 running backs or 3 wide receivers and a tight end or 3 wide receivers and a quarterback, and then I'm starting my running back room with Aaron Jones. I'm happy with that. I mean, you can't really ask for much more if you're doing it like that. I mean. That team we keep talking about, Team 6, outstanding draft so far. I can't say a negative thing about it.
Aaron Jones, good value.
Good value with Aaron Jones. I've said that if I had to pick somebody out of the Falcons, it's been Drake London. He's a guy that I would take. We talked about the Hurts, Smith, and obviously Cooper Kupp. Very good draft by that team so far.
Going back, guy, I think we haven't talked about too much. Broward Bravado is asking about them. What are our thoughts on seeing Amari Cooper play today? I'm pretty sure every time Amari Cooper comes up on our live draft coverages, Terp, it's phrased with it. Yeah, he's not the sexiest pick, but that dude was a top 15 receiver, and he gets Deshaun Watson, hopefully a productive Deshaun Watson back. Again, not sexiest pick. I have some concerns because, as we've said the last couple of shows, every report out of Cleveland for most of their joint practices is the O-lines look bad. Watson's scrambling for his life, and the offense been struggling. Maybe outside of Nick Chubb. But, I mean, Amari Cooper goes at the 311 today, wide receiver 18. A dude with Jacoby Brissett last year. Granted, Jacoby Brissett was very good for the Browns and probably better than Watson was. But then there's also that flip side is Amari Cooper was great with Jacoby Brissett. Deshaun Watson comes in, I believe, week 11 or 12. And Amari Cooper's stock kind of nosedived. He stunk. He really did. His stats with Brissett versus Watson were jarring. Awesome. And I think Watson was off almost 2 years. He's coming in the middle of the season, no practices. You hope that's better, but that's in the back of my mind. But enough of hearing from me. What are your thoughts on Amari Cooper kind of going this late 3rd, early 4th is where his ADP's at?
Pretty much what you said. He's not a sexy pick, but I mean, he's in a range where I say he's a tough click. I mean, he's a guy that if he moved down a little bit more, he would be a much easier click. It's just looking at Darren Waller, TJ Hawkinson, Debo, even, Ramondre Stevenson, all the way down to Christian Watson, DJ Moore. To me, those guys are just better fantasy picks. I'm not sitting here saying that Amari Cooper's a bad fantasy pick, but I feel like he just has a lot more questions than, some of these other guys that are drafted after him. And like you said, the Watson thing, they have not looked good in the preseason. I mean, I know they're looking a little bit better lately, but there's a lot of mouths to feed there. And that's a thing that, like, it's not just Amari Cooper. Elijah Moore is there. Peoples-Jones is there. He's going to play. Him and Deshaun Watson have a great rapport. Njoku has, had a good preseason. And then we also obviously have Nick Chubb. So it's interesting to see what happens. I mean, Amari Cooper, in my first draft that I did on these, the streams, I paired him, Watson, and Njoku. And I remember you saying, like, I wasn't really a fan of the team. And I look back at the team and I'm just like, it's just such a tough click with Amari Cooper. And I got him in a great spot, in the mid-4th round, way better than the 3rd round, but we'll see.
The name you also didn't mention, and who knows when, I'm convinced, I watched him at Tennessee. Cedric Tillman, I think is
coming.
Going to
he's
do
a
something.
Talent.
I really think he's going to do something there at some point.
It might not be right away.
It's not going to be right away.
He's well behind, but he's an injury away from, being a pretty large fab pick, in my opinion.
Yeah. Terp, the 6th round, I'm looking at it here and kind of going back to our running back conversation. I just feel way more comfortable investing in names like Dameon Pierce, James Cook, James Conner, Rashad White at that 6th round ADP versus, say, Travis Etienne with a 4th round pick with some really good receivers still on the board. But I want to talk about James Cook, who's a guy who's been skyrocketing up boards. The usage has been good, but then there's just that little damper yesterday with that Damian Harris is going to steal so much goal line work from him, stuff inside the 20s, isn't he?
It's definitely a possibility. I mean, I said that James Cook might be, I love the player, loved him coming out of college. Seems like it's a great fit. Everything has been positive until that preseason game. I mean, if nothing happened in that preseason game, he got that goal line carry and scored that touchdown. You're talking about 4th, 5th round James Cook.
Yeah.
Now it's like, are we a little worried about it? Is it going to be Damian Harris? Is it going to be, some other guy stealing the carries?
Latavius is there.
Latavius Murray. I mean, it's a question, and it's something that's going to be
Josh
stuck.
Allen's there in the goal line.
Yeah, it's going to be stuck in drafters' mind because people are going to be very worried about that. Because if you're not getting touchdowns, that's a big, crutch to have, in an offense, at that position. So he's definitely a guy I'm still drafting. But it's just crazy. Every year we have these guys who James Cook was, comfortably in the 7th, 8th round, now getting steamed up as high as I think the 5th round. So it's interesting to see these guys that get a little positive press. The media's on them, and then they get moved up to where it's just a little bit uncomfortable. I mean, I've been missing out on James Cook a lot, so I've been kind of bummed about that because he's just moving up so fast.
Rich Billion in the chat mentions that this is the latest he's seen James Cook in a while. Honestly, no real surprise that that's the latest. That I think Turf is probably one of the latest we've seen him because it's trying to blind me there, Turf.
I don't know what the heck I'm doing. Sometimes I wonder how my brain works. Like it's just
no, but no surprise. James Cook, his ADP is not a ton, but definitely dips a bit because he was going late 5th, early 6th. He falls to the mid 6th because of that kind of damper that was the preseason game where it was largely positive, right? He was getting all the snaps, but then he jogs off, and it's tough. He's not a big back, so it's going to be tough for him to get a ton of goal line work, especially when they have Damian Harris and Latavius Murray, who 2 guys notoriously through their career have been super effective. The start of the 7th round, J.K. Dobbins and Zay Flowers are 2 guys who are moving up my personal board. It goes back to what I've been saying. I love J.K. Dobbins' upside. I know there's the injury concerns. He was holding that. Of all the guys, no one talked about J.K. Dobbins' little holdout that he was trying to do that did not work. But he's a guy who I'm a belief in. Todd Monken's there. If he just stays healthy, gets to like 200 plus carries. We've seen those running backs who hit the 200 plus carries have great fantasy finishes in that Ravens offense. And Zay Flowers is a guy who I've seen nonstop positive buzz in camp about. And there's always that in the back of your head that the Ravens can't develop receivers talent, which is true. But I don't know, man. Zay Flowers, I'm a believer in. I just love those 2, and their ADP is kind of slowly moving up. I think you're in the same boat because we've had conversations, but how high do you think those 2 can get? Maybe not Dobbins because he actually fell today. He usually goes mid 6.
I'm surprised that there's certain running backs that are in this zone right here, like Cam Akers and J.K. Dobbins, who have got nothing press-wise, nothing media coverage, nothing at all. And it's been very, very surprising that these guys are getting drafted where they are because neither of them have anybody behind them. Nothing. Like you could be a believer in Gus Edwards and Melvin Gordon and Kyron Williams and all these guys, but let's just call it what it is. They are the bell cows of the offense. You saw Cam Akers at the end of the season last year. You've seen what J.K. Dobbins has done, over the years, and these guys want to get paid. So these guys are going to do everything possible, and I think they're just outstanding running back twos in drafts. And you're getting either of them in the second round. Same thing with David Montgomery. Jahmyr Gibbs is getting all the hype, and it's warranted, but David Montgomery is not going to just – they paid him, and he's just not going to go away. He's going to be annoying enough to where he's going to get a lot of goal line work. If he just gets half of what Jamal Williams did last year and is a little bit more efficient running the ball, I mean, wheels up on all these guys. Yeah,
and again, I'm repeating myself now, and I think honestly we're starting to get out of the range of guys where I'm like, not so much. But this kind of from Dameon Pierce right up till, for me at least, like the Cam Akers, I'm really gung-ho and just go ahead on all of those. And just as you said, it's super proper, but invest in those receivers in the first 5. Because for me, I think kind of the receivers peter out kind of around this range. I want to bring attention to team 3, though. So we had mentioned, surprisingly, because we've just seen it so much, a Kelsey team that passed on Mahomes. But look at them. They do get a Joe Burrow and T. Higgins stack. So they're a little bit of a different Kelsey build, I'm sure. And he still has a very effective stack there, in my opinion, with Burrow and T. Higgins. So a nice little start with Zay Flowers, who we've been hyping up as well.
Definitely different. It's definitely one you don't see that much because everybody drafts Kelsey and the Mahomes. I mean, it's just in every draft you see it. Everybody's afraid to do it. And sometimes I get that because if you're competing and it's a Travis Kelsey Mahomes year like it was last year, guess what? When you get to the finals and you don't have them, you're in trouble. It's going to be an uphill battle unless you're perfect with, obviously this team went Burrow and Higgins, which makes a ton of sense. Obviously with that week 17 game, trying to be a little different and it could work out. But it's risky because everybody's doing it, people always say, oh, fade that and don't do that. And I haven't been doing it either, but it's definitely keeps me up at night, not knowing that I don't have a lot of Kelsey Mahomes stacks because if they do what they did last year and, let's just say 80% of it, 90% of it, you're going to be in a world of hurt in leagues because especially, best ball leagues and fantasy pro leagues in the main event, it just puts you at such a disadvantage, especially with that position, with the tight end position. It's so crazy.
I mean, at some point, though, there's owners out there who I understand are like, everyone has this. I'm going to try and differentiate myself. You see it a lot. I'm sure it's probably a little bit more, not effective per se, but it happened more common, the kind of the zigging when everyone else was zagging in terms of the best ball tournament. We've seen it a lot where I'm sure there's so many stacks in that best ball tournament. And people who have a lot of entries are like, yeah, when I get Kelsey, I'm going to do something different. Terp, some commentary in the chat about Cam Akers. Did people mention how much, because we kind of talked about him in this kind of running back, this range, and McVay hates him. People are saying, which is true. I mean, McVay is suppose he tried to go get, and Leslie tried to go get Jonathan Taylor. I don't know if they have an official offer out, but they reached out. So they're always searching clearly for a back. But as in right now, Cam Akers has Kyron Williams and Zach Evans as competition. And I can't get out those last 3 weeks of the season. Cam Akers looked at how Cam Akers did when he was a rookie and really performing well. Long road back with the Achilles, and then last year there was that uncertainty with just why is he not playing? Regardless, there was that week we look back on it. He was out a week or two, just like he says, personal reasons, but it was just take a break from the team. But then he finished the season super strong. And I just can't get that out of my head that maybe that is a possibility as a guy. We talked about finding the next Josh Jacobs, a guy who he's literally the only one. And that could be an offense with not that many weapons besides Cooper Kupp himself and Tyler Higbee.
I couldn't agree more. I'm surprised he's not moving up drafts. I mean, he's definitely a guy that I've been targeting a ton. I mean, he's falling in drafts, which is very surprising.
He's fallen since we started doing these.
I mean, as a running back 2, running back 3 in some formats, it makes so much sense. Like we talked about, there's nobody behind him. There's nothing to worry about. There's a couple of young players, but nothing of any, warrant. So wheels up on Cam Akers. I'm still drafting him a ton.
Yeah, it was a guy who, you saw him late 5th, early 6th when this kind of opened. And now, surprisingly, he's a guy who I wouldn't have pegged as a guy who kind of has fallen He's one of those. There hasn't been really any news about him, and then the news that we're getting related to Rams running backs has been, oh, they're interested in Jonathan Taylor.
I'm coming back home.
You're all good. So just a very weird spot there. But as you said, I think the chat has it right. There's that uncertainty with the fact that who knows what McVay thinks. Terp, it's interesting. Our dynasty startup that we did on Wednesday, I believe we kind of mentioned it was a great question. If you could choose any player to kind of see their stats for the year, if you knew it going into it. Yeah. I don't know if this is exactly what Rich Billy was saying, but he just is talking in the chat about how he just wants to know what Sky Moore is going to do.
Yeah, because I mean, is Sky Moore going to be the guy? Because if let's just say you saw his stats and he wasn't very good, that could mean two things. I mean, Kadarius Toney is the savior of the team, or Justin Ross, or one of these other guys, or do they add somebody, or is the Chiefs just a disaster this year? Or, is it Kelsey Mahomes show? There's a ton of questions, and Sky Moore is definitely a good answer to that question.
More on Akers, Graham Toucher. He's a Rams fan that they lost 41-0. The Rams are probably going to be bad again. They weren't good last year. And
it's Stafford, my only fear with Cooper Kupp.
Yeah, but last year they were so bad, and it didn't. And Stafford had one functioning elbow, and Cooper Kupp was still
all
great.
Reports are Stafford's healthy. That's
wouldn't you want them to be though? That they're just, I guess, not bad enough where Kupp and Stafford are sitting, but bad enough where they're
I just want them to be competitive enough. I don't know the contract situation with Cooper Kupp, but he's definitely a name that would be a popular name at the trade deadline if they just stink. But you don't want, most of the time you see, like we saw Devontae Adams at the end of the season last year, they were terrible and just balled out. So you don't question that. But Cooper Kupp's a gamer. He's a guy that's going to be out there if he's healthy. But that's my only worry with Cooper Kupp. I mean, I have drafted Cooper Kupp number 1 in a couple drafts, not recently, but early on. And I think he could easily be exactly where he was on pace to last year before he got hurt. So it's definitely a question. The offensive line is not great. You got to question the desire of Stafford, the desire of McVay, the desire of a couple other guys on the team, but never the desire of Cooper Kupp. He's just a beast.
Another answer to that question, who I did not give you on Wednesday about a guy that I'd love to know stats, one or the other, Charbonnet or Kenneth Walker. Because I was looking back on it, just kind of like scanning the draft, and Kenneth Walker at the 410. And to me, it makes sense. But the gap between them, Pete Carroll is like a actually good coach version of Arthur Smith, in that he's the worst for fantasy owners, it feels. And I have no idea.
Fantasy owners.
Not as much the passing game, which I guess is a
problem. Not the passing game. Passing game's fine.
They're kind of flipped, right? Because Arthur Smith, we theoretically know what he's going to do. Although, granted, last year we didn't, like Cordero all of a sudden with Algier, but he's usually runs one guy, running game. Passing game, it's who knows. It's the opposite. In Seattle, we know, I'm pretty sure all of these names could be productive. But that rushing game is Walker. Like, they've invested both of them second-round capital back. But is that just going to be a split? Who knows? I'm rambling. But there was a question. Yeah, that's what we do on this. We freaking ramble, and
I love a good ramble.
Jackson Smith and Jigba goes to the 805. Speaking of that, which and that fall continues. So like those, I love them. I always blindly trust them. The doctors on Twitter, like the actual blindly, like Pro Football doctors.
No clue who they are. Yeah, they have a lot of followers, but you'd have no idea if they're just speaking babble or not.
But they were saying, I've seen a lot from them of they think it's more likely that Smith and Jigba comes back week 4 or later than getting back week 1 or 2. So the drop 100% is not surprising.
With them. I just think the drop should be warranted. I mean, it all comes down to structure. It does, because I love them, and I know a lot of other guys love them. I think he would have finished better than Tyler Lockett this year. That's definitely going to be very hard to do right now, because even when he's back, I mean, he's got to get in game shape. When is he going to be 100%? And that's probably going to be a little longer than fantasy owners are willing to wait. But he's such a talented kid. So he's definitely a guy that if you can get at the right price with the right build, I mean, it's worth taking a shot on. But I'll use the Bijan team that drafted him. You're going Addison and Deontay Johnson likely to start from the jump.
Yeah.
And you just have the ultimate 2 wild cards in JSN and Tony. So
the thing is, I don't think JSN's a wild card per se, because I think it's just a matter of, if you're drafting him, depending on where he is on your receiver depth chart, he might be hitting his stride weeks 9, 10. Well, before, and it would be different if this team didn't have as much, but with DK, Lockett still there, I always thought it would maybe take a little bit slower. And then kind of the preseason starts and training camp, and like maybe this could be sooner. Let me move the board down. Maybe this could be a little bit sooner than I anticipated. Him really emerging now with an injury. Let's say
I think he's a league-winning upside player. I think he's a guy that I drafted a ton early. Drafted a ton, in the last couple, month or so. The injury definitely has, its questions, and it's obviously it's going to hold you up a little bit because, these shorter regular season and your non-best ball contest, you got to make a decision every week. And if he's not available, you're storing a spot on your bench and trying to get some wins. So, I love JSN. I said that he could easily be the number one target getter on the team by the time the season's over Metcalf, over Lockett. The injury, though, it's going to be tough to get there, and the unknown with Pete Carroll. But if anybody can do it, the kid has the talent to do it. It's just there's just a couple things that are going against them right now.
Jackson Smith-Njigba will be a wide receiver 2, so top 24 receiver or better from weeks 10 to 18. That's my prediction.
100%.
It's just a matter of can he be that or touch that before we 10?
He is like we always talk about guys you could stay like Jameson Williams. Like we don't really Jameson Williams is a wild question mark right now. Yeah. But guys like that you can just store on your bench, build depth, get through the weeks of JSN being out. You could have a guy that's going to be very unowned in some of these sprints at the end, and a guy that could be $1 million winner because I love JSN's talent. He has top 10 wide receiver, upside in my opinion.
And there's a great point in the chat. And I was going to say it before I even saw this comment they mentioned Amon-Ra St. Brown, how he didn't do anything. Jackson Smith-Njigba Amon-Ra St. Brown is rookie didn't do anything like the first 9 weeks. Jackson Smith-Njigba sniffs to me of a guy next year where it's all the fantasy Twitter accounts are going to be tweeting, oh, Jackson Smith-Njigba from weeks 11 to 18. Like, look at this. Like he's
going to be a second round, third round pick next year. That's just skyrocketing up draft boards. I could see it.
Yeah. And I'm sure for especially Terp, speaking for you, the way I know you kind of sometimes build your teams, I'm sure this kind of dip in JSN is kind of fantastic as a guy.
It's definitely a great dip. It's definitely a dip. With my mains coming up this week and, some fantasy pros at the end of the week, I'm going to be buying this dip. I mean, it all depends on roster construction. Like you can't get too, crazy with it, but 8th round, I've seen them fall in the 9th round. Some of these, it's worth the risk because the upside is immense. And when you're trying to win shootouts at the end of the season, you got to get there first. But when you're trying to win them, a guy like JSN might not be on a lot of these teams because, people just don't want to, they're a little scared.
A couple of things. Grimm's talking about JSN's last year at Ohio State was hurt. And now he's hurt again. Although, to be fair, JSN, that was a leg injury that he seemed fully recovered from. His look great. This is a broken wrist on just kind of a fluke play. I can't really knock him for that. I don't think that's a really something that I'm saying that
it's also hard to knock many Ohio State wide receivers. I mean, especially recently.
The only thing I will say though is I was never out on him by any means. I thought he was always getting drafted. I should say I always thought he was getting drafted right where he should be. So I never had to comment him, but I do think this boosts up DK a lot. A guy who I think that Gino was going to target a lot like he did last year.
It's definitely going to be an early season DK. Mm-hmm. I'm surprised he's not moving up into the second round in some drafts, to be honest with you. I mean, he's a guy that I have not been on at all. He's not, I think I have like 2%, maybe 3% DK Metcalf. He's definitely a guy that I'm probably going to try to get on some teams as we get, to the end, just to have some exposure, especially early season when he could put up some spike weeks. But I don't know. With JSN there, when he's back and healthy, I just feel like there's going to be so many. And I just think JSN is the most talented out of the three.
Mm-hmm. I'm just going to catch up on comments. We appreciate everyone who's in the chat because we had these main event. You guys are the best chat rooms always, seriously. So we appreciate it. Question for Famous Jay: if Aaron Rodgers duplicates his MVP years from 2020 to 2021, where would A-Rod land as a fantasy QB? We actually talked about this, I think, last main event term. I said, or maybe it was the start. It was definitely last week's main event. I said, yeah, I think Aaron Rodgers is being a bit undervalued. But then I looked at the QBs taken above him. I'm like, I guess QB 16 does sound right. If he gets back to the MVP form, I mean, that's a top 10 quarterback. He has his Devontae Adams equivalent. The issue is in Green Bay, those O-lines were always great O-lines. And by all accounts, that Jets O-line is going to be porous.
Very average.
So I think Rodgers will be okay. He's just going to get the ball out super quick and kind of let his receivers go to work. That receiver room is also looking a bit bare outside of Wilson. There's no Breece Hall and Dalvin, I think, are going to carry. They're solids coming from a scheme where they love to run the ball. I find it hard for Rodgers, especially he's 39, to get back to those MVP. If he does, to answer the question, I think he's a top 10 quarterback. I don't know about top 5, but top 10 for sure. I just don't see that happening with the situation at hand. Although I do think he's going to have some really good weeks with kind of some of the weapons that the Jets do have, especially Wilson, Breece, Dalvin. I think a lot of them could
Garrett Wilson to the moon.
A lot of checkdowns for like 70-yard touchdowns that Rodgers has nothing to do with, I think happened in New York this year.
Garrett Wilson to the moon. And really besides that, like obviously Allison Breece Hall, but I don't really have that many Jets. I like their team. I think they're, definitely a force in the AFC. You need Aaron Rodgers to be motivated. And I think personally, Aaron Rodgers needs to put up stats to be motivated. Teams obviously have to win too, but he's definitely somebody that I'm watching a little bit more lately. I mean, I think he would be a great backup quarterback. Like if you wait on QB, like you take somebody like Tua, I think he's a guy that has plenty of upside in the right matchup. Same thing with like Anthony Richardson, things like that. He's a guy that you could easily get through the first couple of weeks in games that he's going to have to score. So I like Aaron Rodgers. I'm not going to be pounding the table for him. He will never be a starting quarterback for me, as my only quarterback or, leader in my QB room. But he's going to force feed the ball to Garrett Wilson and Garrett Wilson to the moon. I've said it since day one. He's if I'm drafted at the end of main events, which I have a couple picks at the end, they will be Garrett Wilson teams. I can tell you that.
Terp, going back to kind of the chat. I'm getting lost in the questions. Oh, but just back to JSN, I did want to answer this question is, you mentioned it. How early would you take JSN now? Like kind of factoring in the dip, would you take him in the 7th? I can get up Mojo for you. Let me do that.
Yeah, I think the 7th makes sense. I mean, I think the 7th makes sense. I mean, it all depends on how your roster is constructed. I mean, like if you could tell me I can get JSN as my 4th receiver with a build, I would be ecstatic about that. If you're telling me I can get JSN as my 2nd receiver, I don't know if I'm as crazy about that because you got to win your league. And these main events and Fantasy Pros Championship, availability is obviously, very, very important. And we don't know when he's going to be back. So by the time he's back, and if you're drafting him as your 2nd receiver, you could be in a world of hurt that it might not matter.
The Terp, again, just completely zoned out what I was going to say. You know what? I'm just going to move on. I have no idea what I was going to say. Oh, I
love it when zoning out.
That's like the 3rd time already. I mean, I don't know what it is, but
I mean, think about it. You've been doing all these coverages. I mean, these last week is crazy for an FFPC employee. I can't even imagine all the stuff you guys are doing.
It is certainly busy. I know what I was going to say.
I don't envy you this week. All the guys.
The last couple of weeks are the busiest weeks of the year.
Just complete bedlam because you're getting a bunch of just craziness happening.
Requests.
Obviously,
it's not the last couple of days. What I've been doing is obviously the live events. We have the like the name cards. So when if you go to Vegas to draft, like your spot because around you have like the U table, 3 tables, right? And you have the name card. Doing all of those manually, baby, to make sure they're all right. It's like 500 plus.
I don't envy that at all. I mean, I give you all the credit in the world for that. Congrats on that. But
it wasn't too bad. You throw on a podcast and just get to work. But Terp, I know what I was going to say is Jackson Smith and Jigba's range the last 2 days in main events, 6'10" to 9'10". So settling in the early 8th. So pretty wild range.
Very wild range, and it's a range at this point in drafting you don't see that often.
No.
So,
I think because there's uncertainty. There people don't know. Is it going to be a pup list? He's going to be on, miss 4 games, or is he going to be back by week 1? People don't know,
and that's a big question because that if he goes on, let's just say I'm drafting in Vegas Friday, after the first game, and you get word that JSN or Jerry Jeudy goes on the pup list. Live drafting is so much different than online drafting. I know people will say I'm crazy by saying that, but people will panic and these guys will plummet down draft boards. I know most of these guys are seasoned donors, and you don't get a lot of random Joes out there, but still, like, these are short regular season contests that you have to try to win to get to the $1 million shootout. And Jerry Jeudy or JSN goes in the pup list, they're going to plummet down draft boards, and that's exactly what somebody like me wants. I want them to plummet down draft boards because sitting at the right spot, you could pluck off some value, and then when they're back, you could be sitting with a gold mine.
The Rich Billy in the chat saying I need more coffee. Let me tell you that I am lucky that Planet Hollywood has multiple Starbucks locations because that's what you got to do to survive.
Fun fact:
come Vegas.
I don't drink coffee. It's disgusting. I know.
I mean, I don't blame you.
I know I am. But
I'm telling you, I'm in the same boat. Like normal day to day, never. But it's just like the occasional, like, yep, I really need one. And last year in Vegas, I didn't. But there was multiple times like, I'm happy it's there if I do. Because Vegas, that is long days,
long days, long nights, and maybe not much sleep. So,
but wouldn't trade it in for anything else. It's
not
great
it's
environment.
It's one of the most funnest things I've ever done in my life, going out there to draft.
Let me tell you, my first year, the Thursday game, you're like, football's back into the bare knuckle challenge, and going to see that. It's like, oh yeah, this is awesome.
Have been drinking the whole game, that are just spitting out names that, it gets wild. And the craziest part about it is most of these guys, you're not entering a bare knuckles, no draft boards, no notes, no computers, no nothing. If you don't know what
nothing
you're doing,
in front of you, no one advising you.
And most of these guys have been boozing all day, whether it's through the game, at the pool, whatever. Most of these drafts aren't too wacky either. Like the last couple of years, I remember looking at them, I'm just like that's pretty impressive, because I've done a million drafts, and I don't think I could do it as well as some of these guys are doing.
I think I'm probably going to mess up the name. I think there was only one time the entirety of the 28 rounds last year in the bare knuckle challenge where there was like an audible. Everyone's like, oh my God, like, how do we forget him? And I think it was James Robinson.
Lucky that guy.
Like, that was the only guy who fell.
And James Robinson was actually like.
It was Cordero. I'm 100%. It was Cordero was the guy who everyone kind of forgot about. But no, it's crazy seeing these guys how they remember. It's like, I think Mike Schopp was saying, it's some of it is just like you're literally memorizing like a school test. You're just reviewing the depth charts, and then you have them down by memory. You're kind of crossing them off in your head. So back to the draft, I want to bounce back. There's a couple of interesting things here. Team 10 goes DeAndre Swift, Roschon Johnson, Kenneth Gainwell, and Khalil Herbert, Swift, Roschon Johnson, Kenneth Gainwell. What do you think about that? An interesting strategy. Not for you.
Not for me. It's never going to be for me. I know people that do it, that have won a lot of money that do it, but you're pretty much wasting 2 draft picks. You got to pick one. If you're taking handcuffs, like if you're taking DeAndre Swift and then Boston Scott in the 18th round, or Rashad Penny, wherever he's going now. All right, maybe I can get behind that. That makes a little bit of sense, but it's clearly Swift and Gainwell. You're wasting, 2 top 10 picks on these guys. So what are you betting against? You're never going to click on both. So how do you decide who to click? I mean, obviously if injury happens, it makes it easier, but I just feel like it's a lineup decisions. This is not best ball. If this is best ball, I still don't agree with it, but it makes a little bit more sense. But in a managed league, you're going to start Khalil Herbert. He's going to have a very suspect first quarter, and then Roschon Johnson's going to be going nuts. And you're going to try to do the same thing the following week. And Roschon Johnson's the guy to put him in there. Yeah. And it's going to be frustrating situations. And it's just not something that I ever do. I just feel like it's a little bit of a flawed system.
You have been on it pretty heavy from the get-go. The latest Philly beat report is there is still a lot of pro Gainwell just saying like, oh, Sirianni, trust him. But the latest reports I've been seeing have been, Swift is just clearly the most talented back here, and he looks really good. Nothing about really Penny. I'm fully on the Swift bandwagon. There is that uncertainty with Gainwell. Kind of liking this Swift's kind of the suppressed ADP.
Love this Swift fall because they're going to give him the chance. I mean, let's just say Gainwell's going to be around at the beginning of the season. He's going to be getting work. He's going to be getting carries. He's not just going to disappear. Swift is going to have to take it from him. If Swift takes it from him like I think and a lot of other people think, we're talking about a home run Josh Jacobs type of pick in the 8th round, and he's fallen. I mean, you can get him in the 8th round as an RB2, RB3. Give me that every single draft because the upside in that offense is immense. I mean, I know the injury risk. Everybody's going to talk about Iowa's
I'm Grumpus saying
he's
the
not
unspoken
wrong.
thing between us is he can't.
There's a lot of mouths to feed there. I get it, but I'm betting on talent. And if DeAndre Swift starts the season off positive, I can see him taking that job away and just running with it. And injuries, we all know they're a big question on some of these guys. That's why they're getting drafted, why they are. But I'm betting on talent, and with talent, I'm betting on DeAndre Swift.
Terp, I love giving you like a soapbox to give your kind of opinions. I wanted to get back to this. I saw it earlier. D-Dance said Luke Musgrave seems to be flying up boards. He definitely has a talent. And I don't know about Jordan Love, though. Luke Musgrave did get drafted at the 12:08, still flying up. But I wanted to give you the time. The time is yours, a little minute segment to try and sell D-Dance on Jordan Love as one of the biggest Packers supporters who actually isn't a Packers fan, I know.
Not a Packers fan. Have nothing to do with Green Bay. But I'm very high on that offense this year. Jordan Love is a guy that from the jump I've been on. Highest known quarterback, and that's not changing as we get closer. I keep pounding him as my backup quarterback, obviously in best ball. But what's there not to like right now? I mean, he has looked very good in the preseason. Christian Watson is an extremely talented player. Romeo Doubs, even though he's a little hamstrung, I don't know if that's anything serious as of now, but has a great rapport with him. Jaden Reed is a very, very solid rookie receiver. Could it take some time? Yes. Aaron Jones is no slouch out of the backfield. And Luke Musgrave clearly has that job locked up. Mm-hmm. Are they questions, obviously, in that division, but that defense, the defense in that division are terrible. Jordan Love and Christian Watson are going to be absolute monsters this year. We already know what I think about Christian Watson, but Jordan Love, in my opinion, will be a low-end QB1. He's getting drafted way down the draft boards, 15, 16 round, and I really think they believe in him to where I'm confident enough to draft him in every draft I get a chance to. And when it comes down to that,
I cut you off there, but I'm going to know what percent Love ownership do you have?
I think as of right now, it's 37%.
He's at 35%. So you two are two peas in a pod right there.
I know we're a very minority, and I'm okay with that because I know a lot of other guys that are get drafted right around him that people are just sky high on. But, especially in best ball, he's a guy that I just keep hitting the button and have no fear about it because there's no, some of these guys have like annoying backups behind them. I'm not worried about Sean Clifford. He is absolutely atrocious at Penn State. I don't care what he's done in the preseason. If they put Sean Clifford in there, then they really are clueless. They have enough talent on the offensive side of the ball with A.J. Dillon, with Aaron Jones, Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, Jaden Reed. They're no slouches. And I know they're not the most talk about, skill position room, but give me Jordan Love and give me him with a lot of confidence.
Maybe not the confidence that Kev Wheeler has. Love is greater than
Love
Rodgers.
Kev Wheeler. Love Kev Wheeler. Love his confidence.
That is confidence.
The Kev Wheeler train.
That is crazy. Terp, I don't want to keep on giving you. I don't want to keep giving you kind of softball like hype up moments here.
Give me some hard ones. I like some hard
ones. No. I'm not doing that. I'm just wanting to mention because the guys who are falling due to dips, maybe due to injury, are guys that you and me both have talked about that we just happen to love. And this is maybe the last softball I give you. You have to love in some ways because you've been open that you don't know if Devon Achane, even before the injury, was going to be the guy early on. You always thought it was going to be later in the season. Mm-hmm. So he's gone from about 10th round to here he goes to 1301. That's got to be a dip you really enjoy as someone who's high on him and already didn't think that he would be being fantasy productive early on in the season. You were willing to wait, taking him the 10th, 11th round, and now he's 13th.
Extremely high on him, and this dip isn't going to be around much longer because you're gonna figure out one of two things in the next coming days. Number one, is Jonathan Taylor on the team? And if Jonathan Taylor's on the team, let's just be real with it. It's not good for Devon Achane. Yep. He's a guy that's probably going to be well behind the depth chart. My guess is, Jeff Wilson or Mostert gets moved, and that's obviously good news for him. But he's going to be banged up at the early season, so it's definitely a worry. But if Jonathan Taylor stays in Indy or goes somewhere else, he's not going to be going in the 13th round. So if I know I'm drafted a bunch in the next couple of days, I will be pounding him at this. He went in the 15th round of a draft that I did the other day. It was with a partner, and he was drafting, so I wasn't paying that much attention. And I'm very, very upset that I wasn't paying attention because a guy like that in the 15th round, you gotta take the chance because he has league winning potential with no Jonathan Taylor. And even with Jonathan Taylor, I think he has value. Like I said, I think if Taylor goes there, either Mostert or Wilson get shipped out of there, and that, the crowded running back room isn't as bad. But no Jonathan Taylor in Miami, please. Let him go exactly where he is in Indianapolis. Give him a little pay ring, increase, and let's make him happy, and let's not screw up anything crazy.
We've kind of mentioned Jonathan Taylor multiple times throughout it. A question from a while ago, we can get to it now. If Jonathan Taylor stays on the pup or he gets traded, where is Deion Jackson going? And then people chimed in saying they like Evan Hull as well. I want to hear your thoughts on it. I'm also going to throw out, I think they would probably sign. They were already very rumored on Kareem Hunt or Fournette, one of those couple of veteran backs out there. But where do you think Deion Jackson goes or Evan Hull if Taylor, let's say, is traded?
I'm a Deion Jackson guy. I'm not really an Evan Hull guy. I don't see anything special. I mean, I know a lot of guys like him, but it's not really something that I'm jumping on. Deion Jackson's serviceable. Is he the guy that you should be moving up draft boards? I don't think so. I mean, I think he's a guy that should be going right in the range of where he's going now with the uncertainty with Jonathan Taylor. So I've added Deion Jackson a little bit, 19th, 20th round, obviously with this uncertainty of Taylor. But if Taylor comes back there, Deion Jackson's pretty much worthless. So, it's definitely something that's going to happen in the next couple of days, whether he gets traded, not get traded, whether they try to do the same thing they did with Jacobs, pay him a little bit more, shut him up for a year, and then figure it out again next year. But let's just call it what it is. Jonathan Taylor is not getting a big contract, so he better figure something out quickly because no team's going to pay him what he thinks he's worth, and no team should because Jonathan Taylor, I'm sorry, is not a top 5 running back in the league.
I go back and forth on the running back kind of conundrum because at a core level, I understand it that they're not, but at the other time is no one's freaking out about kicker pay, and running backs have been proven to be more replaceable. It's just
all of them. How many
it's a very
top
unfortunate
5
stuff.
running backs have been in Super Bowls?
Lynch
Name
is probably the
one
last
has
one.
Won a Super Bowl. And Marshawn Lynch.
10,
I mean,
11,
as great as he was in his
ago
career, I don't know if he was ever a top 5 running back in football.
I don't know about
Marshawn
Lynch. Marshawn Lynch in his prime, I think. Like Lynch was probably the last legitimate running back. I was like, yeah,
Christian McCaffrey, Adrian Peterson, Saquon Barkley. I mean, you can keep going down the list. Todd Gurley. I mean, all these, it's just it's not. You just don't pay the room, and one day it might change, but right now it's just you look at all these top guys who are getting paid. How many times has Derrick Henry made it? What's Derrick Henry brought to the Tennessee Titans that has made him worth that contract? Nothing is the answer. Nothing. So
it is funny to me all the names that are being floated in the chat. Yeah, Marshall Faulk. Dude,
how many years ago was that? It was like 5
years ago. It's the idea is that you invest in the offensive line and some of your skill positions and running backs,
wide receivers.
You can get them not only late in the draft, good ones, or you can just draft them in the draft, and that's kind of a cheap running back for you to have for 4 years. And then the interesting thing we talked about it,
Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles last year. It's a perfect example.
Kansas City every year.
Pacheco free, McKinnon free. CEH sucked. He was inactive in the Super Bowl.
And regardless of his contract isn't crazy, even if CH was good, you invest in a late first, his contract's manageable.
Kenny Gainwell was their leading guy in the thing. We go back to when they won the Super Bowl.
Corey Clement was the guy.
Corey Clement, Jay Ajayi,
the best catches in Super Bowl history.
LeGarrette Blount. I mean, it is.
That Corey Clement catch is not talked about enough. How crazy that was.
It really isn't. I mean,
that catch is because it's Corey Clement and it was like early in the game, but that catch is nuts. 100%. I mean, look at the Patriots. Some of this is slightly skewed because of how the Patriots won so many, and they just never paid running backs. But no, it's a great point. And part of it is also I don't want to beat a man while he's down. And then flip side is you're getting paid $12 million. Like I think you're doing good. But the idea is you see Saquon and Josh Jacobs. They kind of not broke, but their holdout was always destined to be
they destroyed all leverage running back has.
They're just like
Saquon Barkley was the leader of this, and once he came
2 days later.
Once he came back for a little bonus, they were dead in the water. All these guys are dead in the water because Barkley deserves a contract. He puts it on paper. Like last year had a great year. I'm not sitting here saying he deserves a max deal or a big deal or anything like that, but he deserves another contract. These guys have done nothing. Jonathan Taylor was awful last year. Awful.
I mean, Jacobs and Taylor arguably have had two truly great years. Each of them have had one great year.
What has that got either of the teams? Zero.
Yeah, and I don't even know. Like,
last year was
does
a
Saquon deserve
monster.
a contract?
He does.
Injury prone, and he's getting up there in age. It's just analytically.
Again, I'm not sitting here saying that he is $20 million a year guy, $15 million a year guy, but he should be, in my opinion, one of the highest paid running backs, whatever that means. But I mean, I'm still not paying him. I don't care what he should get. There's never a time until the collective bargaining agreement or whatever the heck all that jargon stuff is. Running backs should never get paid. Give me the 6th, 7th round draft picks, the Pacheco's of last year that were the darlings, and we've seen over all the years. Just don't pay them. It just doesn't. It's not a winning proposition.
I mean, Rich Blue's talking also too. Is Barkley is a class act. There's some of it is kind of showing also prospective free agents, like we treat our players right. That is certainly part of it. Barkley is the face of the Giants. Just Terrell Davis. I love how the names being thrown out are guys who I think that proves the point is you can't win with them anymore.
Speaking of the Giants, I mean, I don't know what the Cardinals are doing, but literally, we're talking about a defensive player here, but I'm not saying Isaiah Simmons is a superstar, but you literally just handed him on a silver platter for a 7th round draft pick.
The funny thing about Isaiah,
anything more from that guy?
That
defensive
just seems,
coordinators would be dreamed to figure him out.
That just seems like a new, and Wink Martindale is the guy to do it. That just seems like a Cardinals front office who has done, actually putting everything aside since they've came in, has done a really good job. Like they did great acquiring more picks. Like that Texans trade is phenomenal, and they still got Paris Johnson. But that just seems like one of those. They're
playing one snap this year.
They didn't want Isaiah Simmons, and they were just we're kind of cleaning house and bringing.
Then you make a trade for Josh Dobbs, like. What?
Some people are saying maybe McCoy retires. I don't know.
I keep hearing that, but Clayton Tune,
give him a chance.
It's a dark room.
They really should have drafted an Aiden O'Connell, just someone in kind of the 3rd, 4th round, more than 2, and just see what you got.
Aiden O'Connell, no matter what.
Trade for Trey Lance.
Took them both.
We haven't even talked about Lance to the Cowboys, but Trey Lance, why didn't the Cardinals throw him a 4th or 5th?
I mean, Kyler Murray's not playing a snap this year. I'm going to say that right now.
I just don't think Kyler's a great quarterback, which is the issue.
I don't think I've always been a hater, and it's not ever going to change. It's definitely the one stance that, I was always a Lamar hater, mostly because he just can't win the playoffs. But I think that this year things could change for him, obviously with the skill position and new offensive coordinator. But it's never going to change for Kyler Murray. He's never winning anything.
Yeah, they're going to be in a weird spot when they get the 1st overall pick. Not a weird spot. It's just someone's going to take Kyler. It's just a matter of who. And that contract. The question in the chat was asking, Clement, was it a catch? I mean, I'm not even going to ask.
What do you think?
What do you think?
Of course, it was a catch. It was the most beautiful catch. Oh, it was just majestic.
I was thinking about that kind of. The 4 quarterbacks in those championship games, the Foles, Keenum, Blake Bortles, and Brady. Because did you see the report that Blake Bortles is so bored in retirement, he joined the construction crew building his home? What a legend that guy is.
I did see such a legend. And the worst part about it is they should have beat the Patriots that day.
Oh, yeah. I love that. The Miles Jack retired. And they're like, with Miles Jack retiring, it's a great time to remind you that Miles Jack was not down. So, hey. As long as that's the one time I'll give an Eagles win, as long as Brady lost. So,
and it's coming again this year. Just be ready for it. Redemption. Just like North Carolina in college basketball a couple years ago.
I have a trivia for you. Who was the last quarterback to lose a quarterback appearing for the first time in the Super Bowl? They lost that Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. Who was the last quarterback to have lost their first Super Bowl appearance to make it back?
The first name that popped in my mind, I'm pretty sure I'm wrong, is Russell Wilson.
Because he won it. It's John Elway, I'm pretty sure, off the top of my head. Isn't that kind of crazy?
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, it's surprising, actually, there hasn't been somebody before that.
I think it's just a matter of it's hard to make it back to a Super Bowl, and the best ones they win their first one
with injuries and all that stuff. That's why it's it's kind of better to go into the season with no expectations. But it's just the Eagles have all the expectations in the world. I mean, there's maybe 2, 3, maybe 4 teams in the NFC that could make a run. Obviously, the 49ers being the one team that they're coming. You know, they can talk all they want, but 49ers ain't coming to Philly and winning. You can cut this clip right here, save it for that time, because it's going to be just like the GOAT District winning the thing last year, the pros versus Joes. That clip's going to be out there. San Fran, Brock Purdy's coming to Philly and winning. I don't care what's wrong. It's never happening.
You're lucky.
Sam Darnold.
The NFC sucks.
It's so bad. I mean, the Saints division,
awful.
You need some fluky. To me, if it's not San Fran or it's not the Eagles, or maybe Seattle. I'm Grump. If you don't think the Eagles are going back, who is going to beat them? And please don't say the Dallas Cowboys. I do not need my blood pressure getting high because the Dallas Cowboys.
It would be the Niners, I think, is the only one. The only thing the Eagles slightly have is and they're still going to be really good, but the defense probably got a little bit worse, which is nice for the Eagles.
It did.
And
the schedule's also very tough. The schedule's not a joke. I'm not going to. They play the AFC East,
but that O-line is nasty. They added Swift. Another year, Hurts is only going to probably improve. The only way they don't make the NFC Championship, obviously, in my head, is if Hurts gets hurt. That's like, which I'm not going to.
If Hurts gets hurt, they're done. I mean,
they're screwed. But
Marcus who's going to be the backup?
That's rough. But
I can't suffer through a season with Marcus Mariota. It's just no.
But that's a lot of teams with an elite quarterback, unless maybe Kansas City could survive for a bit. But
if something happens to Jalen Hurts, which God I hope never happens to, I would call Nick Foles in a second. And I'm on record saying that when Nick Foles won that Super Bowl, they should have shipped him out of town right away. Get the most value for him, and they didn't, and they created a lot of mess when it came to Wentz. But he won a Super Bowl, so it's hard to just say goodbye to somebody like that.
I mean, that was. I feel like every draft we have one round just discussing the Eagles. And my last question to you then, because let's get back to the draft of this, but the conversation, because then I used to live in Philly for 5 years, and the conversation was who's the greatest Eagles quarterback of all time? Because is it Foles because he won? Can you say McNabb and all the issues he left? Or
you never say McNabb. I think it has to be Foles. He won the Super Bowl. He won what nobody else could do. You could probably put Randall in there. If you're saying what the best season ever, I mean, you could put Carson Wentz in that.
I would say Hurts' season last year was better than
Hurts last year. I agree there because he got the job done. Getting to the Super Bowl, which obviously Wentz got hurt. So if Hurts wins a Super Bowl this year, no one will remember any of those other names. Nick Foles obviously will never be forgotten in this city, but McNabb is a distant afterthought. I mean, for all the times that all the teams, it's disgusting. I can't even bring that some of them years up that they were just so good and just lost to such dust.
What about Jaws? Jaws?
No,
okay,
not Jaws. Come on, he's too old for me.
Going back to let's get back to the draft. I mean, granted, we are in the late rounds. This is what we do. We get sidetracked. But Turp, I kind of want to ask you about Brock Purdy. And you might say, I feel like your answer could be maybe a little bit more of a best ball name. If you look at what he did as a starting quarterback, I know you just made fun of him about playoffs coming into Philly, which I do agree with. I don't think he can. But he had a bunch of finishes. Like I think since he quarterback, he had 8 of his 9 or whatever starting. Most of them he was at least QB 17 or higher, like QB 18 or higher. So maybe you're going to say, he's probably a best ball quarterback. But the point is, with those weapons that he has, he's going to have a lot of weeks, I think, where he just is a top 12 quarterback just by product of Christian McCaffrey screen past 60 yards. And I wanted to see, he goes at QB 19, but he's going to be a guy who think he outperforms his ADP, even though I can't necessarily fathom maybe taking him over some other guys, if that makes sense.
I'm shocked at his ADP. And I've said that on the last couple of shows that we have. It makes no sense to me at all. I don't know how he's not. I mean, you could make a case and put him in the same category as Tua and Dak and Geno and Daniel Jones. With the weapons he has, you saw the spike, potential out there. Look what he did against Seattle in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. That range of possibilities is out there. Obviously being a very, very good team in a very, very bad division, they're going to have some game scripts that are not in his favor. But I really feel like Kyle Shanahan is going to do everything possible to jam Brock Purdy down the NFL's throats. And they gave up on Trey Lance and try to make him as much as possible, whether that's running up the score, putting up numbers. I don't understand why he's getting drafted in the 15th round. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense to me. His case versus Dak Prescott. Why is Dak better than Brock Purdy? And I think Dak's a better quarterback, but fantasy-wise, like, what makes you think that Dak is clearly 5 rounds better than Brock Purdy?
But do I sound like a moron? I genuinely mean that like when I say there's some guys who I'm like, this guy is going to finish better than QB 19, but there's only so many names in front of him that I actually take him over. Like, I know he's going to do better. It's just tough.
I personally wouldn't take him over certain names that we talked about either. But I mean, if you just started a draft, like if you were in a draft and you just said, screw this, I'm not taking a quarterback, and your quarterback starting day one was Brock Purdy, I wouldn't be worried. I'd be perfectly okay with that. I think he presents enough upside that the rest of your team is just so stacked those other 3 positions that Brock Purdy was your starter. Obviously you get a Kittle or a McCaffrey or a Samuel and an Ayuk to pair with him. I'm not worried about that. I'll take my chances with Purdy and like a Purdy Jordan Love team or a Purdy Russell Wilson team or a Purdy Pickett team or something like that. I don't see the disrespect on Purdy. And again, I don't think he's gonna. I'm still worried about the injury. I'm still worried about, is he back? Is he ready to go? Is he going to be 100%? I know he's been playing the preseason and everything's been positive, but is his arm going to wear down? Like, I still have my questions, but 15th round seems like one of the most ridiculous values right now in drafts. Like, some of these guys that are going around, I'm like, Jared Goff. We just talked about another thing. Jared Goff as a 16th round draft pick. Have no worry starting him as my quarterback. Like, if you could tell me I could start a best ball draft, maybe not a main event because it's a little bit more, managed and you have to click buttons and like start guys. If you could tell me I could start my quarterback room in a best ball contest with Brock Purdy, Jared Goff, and Derek Carr, I'd be perfectly okay with that. I love Derek Carr, but you get what I'm kind of saying here. Yeah. Like, with the rest of his positions so stacked, Kenny Pickett,
a name thrown in the chat as a guy in this range who should be going higher.
It makes a ton of sense, and like, it's actually making me think a lot of adding some best balls here coming up and trying to just punt the position and just seeing what happens. Because if I could start a room with those 3 guys at quarterback, I'm okay with that.
Kenny Pickett is just maybe one of the biggest winners from the preseason. He was probably, you're looking at 18th, 19th. He's in the 15th, so he's moving up, but that Steelers offense looks good. It's only preseason, still Matt Canada, but there's something there. And you mentioned golf. I think Bradley Stalder months ago now, probably, when he talked about us with golf, and even if we can pivot a little bit to best ball more so, but if you make it to those final championship rounds, golf schedule, he's in a dome against Dallas week 17. That's something. If you get there, that's great. So yeah, a lot of these quarterbacks, I know you
can do a lot worse.
Tight ends and quarterbacks, I feel very similar in that there's a big emphasis this year on there's only a select few elite ones. A lot of people kind of going back to getting, obviously in the FFPC, obviously tight end premium. So more so with the tight ends, but even quarterbacks, let's get the Hurts, Allen. People are reaching on those guys. But in both positions, I'm finding that while there is that elite tier and you want to get in, but if you miss out, it's not as bad as in past years. I think there's a lot of options late. Tight end wise, we mentioned throughout the Kincaids, the Laportas, but then the Jawan Johnsons, the Gerald Everetts. I'm in on Hunter Henry, just kind of things like that where I think you could get away with being fine. You mentioned Purdy, Pickett, Love, Jared Goff, guys like that. So
it's definitely going to be something you look back at after this year and look at the quarterbacks. Obviously, I talk about the top 8 guys. I think they're pretty set in stone. Watson being my 9th, but if you don't get one of those guys, they kind of all look the same to me. So to me, build your team, try to get as much depth as possible, and take, a Purdy Goff or a Purdy Love or a Purdy, Richardson, whatever, and shoot for the moon, because it just makes a ton of sense based off your roster construction that you're not moving up some of these guys for no real reason. Like we talk about Pat Freiermuth and David Njoku and, guys like that in the range, Evan Ingram, people don't know, nobody loves, nobody hates, but they're kind of just stuck in like the, middle, tier where it's not really sexy. Punt that thing and give me the Jawan Johnsons of the world and the Jake Fergusons and the Luke Musgraves of the world and the, guys like that, the Sam Laportas, that have just as much upside 2 or 3 rounds later.
I was trying to look up. I for some reason, I'm going to check this before making myself sound like more. I had a way better like visual in my head of Purdy as a rusher than he did, because he did not do anything rushing wise in the regular season, at least. Maybe I'm just thinking of his thing, but so that was an embarrassing moment for me. Turp, I'm surprised though that going back to something you said, Watson is still your QB9, which has been pretty stable throughout. And you're a guy, you draft a ton. You're I mean, people come here, they trust your opinion. I get that. But I wanted to hear, I'm surprised you're keeping him, because a lot of other names in the space who personally, and me at personal level, who I follow, I love their content. You've mentioned there's a lot of guys we've had on the show with their podcast, their articles. They're very knowledgeable. How they're saying in recent weeks that they've really started to fade that Browns offense. You haven't. So kind of going back all the way, why are you keeping Watson at QB9 when a lot of other people at your level in the space have started to fade him?
I'm definitely not fading him. I'm not buying into this preseason. Like, I know he hasn't looked good, in preseason and obviously in camp so far, but I trust the talent. I trust the weapons. I really think they're going to be throwing the ball a lot more. I think they have a ton of talent at the receiver position, something they haven't had in the past. Elijah Moore brings a different dynamic to that offense. I think Njoku's going to be a pretty solid tight end this year. I don't love him that much for fantasy, but at the right spot, it makes sense. Obviously, we know how good Nick Chubb is. I just don't think Watson. I think out of everybody after the top 8 that we talked about 100 times, I feel like Watson's the only one that I really love to get to that level. To where these guys are going. Like Trevor Lawrence is my QB8, so he's the guy that is close to Watson in my rankings. That I feel like Watson could get there. Do I think Watson can have a top 5 season? Yeah, it's in the range of possibilities. Would I ever draft him in that range over guys like Herbert, Lamar, Josh Allen, Mahomes, Hurts? I don't see that world possibly, because I just feel like they're giving you such an advantage this year. But, I'm not down on the Browns offense. Like some people are starting to fade, crazy lately. So we'll see what happens. I don't think that's going to change. Obviously, I have a bunch of mains this week. And if I punt the QB position, Deshaun Watson is definitely a guy that I target.
Rich Billy in the chat saying, well, that settles it. I'm going to punt QB and tight end in my main event this weekend and get Musgrave and Laporta and then grab Love and Goff late, which, Rich, if you're listening to us, I do like that. I think it's a great strategy. But then in the back of my head, I also think, Rich, you're listening to the guy, at least with me, who was all over Allen Robinson and Cortland Sutton last year and Elijah Moore and who made fun of multiple Josh Jacobs picks. So sometimes I'm like, you know what? I would think you're probably a little more knowledgeable and trust yourself. But no, in all seriousness, I think Turp agrees, is the point is that there's some QBs late that if you are punting it and you hit on your running backs and receivers, you'll be in a fine spot and won't be sacrificing too much at the quarterback position. And Kev Wheeler, Turp is with you. He's overloaded Watson. Rich makes a good point too, is watching throughout his career flash that.
It sounds like we're getting close to the end of the round. You're having a little technical difficulties.
It's storming right outside. I'm sure that's not helping.
It's getting a little scary. I mean, we got 10 days to the season starting. So, I mean, it's going to get a little stormy. Things are going to get a little bumpy.
I don't even know when I got cut off, but I was in some spiel and I looked down and my screen is literally blank. I'm like, oh, I literally say to myself,
you were still there. You were talking, but it was just kind of like a little bit of mumbling. It's okay. It happens.
Well,
nothing's perfect.
Rich says, Aiden, love you and Turp. You know what? We love ourselves too.
We love, we do. We love ourselves. And Rich, hopefully see you in a couple, I mean, I don't even know how long it is to Vegas. I keep saying 10 days. I don't even know it's 10 days. I get in on Wednesday. Hopefully all these guys that come in the chat and guys that we've interacted through on Twitter, come say hi. We don't bite. Don't be a stranger. And let's have
11 days. 11 days till the season kicks off and the live events start. I'm pretty sure.
Correct. I'll be getting out there Wednesday. I know you're out there on Tuesday.
Yeah.
I'm excited. I haven't been there in a couple of years now, so I'm excited to get back, meet a bunch of guys, and have as much fun as possible, and hopefully draft $1 million team.
I'll be rooting for you. I'll slightly pulling for you, but yeah, I mean, again, back to Vegas, $1 million winners last year, drafted in Vegas, so live
from the 12th pick, and they drafted Allen Robinson. Never forget it.
Yeah,
every time I get a chance, I just can't.
Every time they come up, I always mention it. They have said that they back-to-back winners to go Bills franchise. 2 years ago, they said perfect team from the start. It was just pristine. It was smooth sailing. Last year was just not their best team that they drafted, even throughout the season, and they just got hot in the right weeks. I mean, Donovan Knight.
And that's
Jerick
all
McKinnon.
it takes. Just figure out a way to get it in the dance, and then once you get to the dance, like you got to make the right decisions. Obviously, I mean, you need a little luck on your side. You need the Jamar Chases, you need the Kelsey Spike Weeks, you need the Stephon Diggs, the Alvin Kamaras of years past, of just to get you and separate you, and then the rest is history. I mean, you see all these teams that have won, millions of dollars, whether it's the Fantasy Pros Championship or the main event, you got to get some luck. Jerick McKinnon's another great name. I mean, how many teams rode Jerick McKinnon to money last year? Yeah. Everybody rode Josh Jacobs, but the only thing about Josh Jacobs is he didn't win anybody any money at the end of the season. He won a lot of regular season money.
And I don't mean to rip open a score, but same with Jalen Hurts. And that was just due to injury, right?
100%. Yeah. He got hurt. He pretty much carried. I mean, where he got drafted last year, he carried fantasy teams. And then when it came down to it, people that drafted one quarterback. I remember one of the teams I had in the finals last year, we went naked Jalen Hurts going into the playoffs, thinking there's no way, he's invincible. He gets hurt, that team sunk, and that team was early on making moves up the leaderboard. But once you lose a quarterback, you're done.
Yeah, they got McKinnon, Zay Jones, Donovan Knight, and there was one more name maybe, but it's slipping my head. They hit their waivers, and then they started the right guys at the right time. Terp, question for you that I always ask. We always talked about this. I remember growing up, and obviously this level, I think it's even more so. But I always say, I'm not even asking you about your opinion, but fantasy football at this level is a game of skill, but there's a whole lot of luck involved.
Ton of luck. A ton of luck. Let's not. Everybody could sit here and say, "Oh yeah, we draft the best team all the time. We make all the waiver moves, and that's why we won $1 million." Stop it. That's not true. It's everything everybody knows is true. Yeah, you have to be talented. You have to pick the right guys. That's the most important step. No matter where you pick in the draft, you got to make sure you pick, the guys that do extremely well. But there's so much more to it when it comes to just injury luck. Like the team that won it last year, the Go Bills guys, they drafted Allen Robinson. They eventually had to make the decision on, hey, let's cut bait on this bum and stop playing him. Mm-hmm. That's hard to do to some guys. Some guys just don't want to do it. They just keep putting Allen Robinson in the lineup and they get burned. They probably, got off the wagon early enough to where they were still in the mix, got hot at the right time, won $1 million. That's how these things go. You need to run good at the right times.
For sure. Turb, I got one more question for you and then we'll get on out of here. 19th round. He goes in the middle of the 19th round. It's hard to ever imagine Richie James becoming fantasy relevant at a consistent basis this season, but at some point, by reports, he's surpassed Rashee Rice on the depth chart. That Chiefs offense, you and me have both been very open. Every stream is someone's going to break out. Just who is it? Justin Ross, the buzz is going, but Richie James in the 19th round. I'm assuming this is a guy you're buying every time. Just maybe the potential that Andy Reid and the Chiefs unlock him.
It's hard not to buy it. It's hard not to be involved in either him or Justin Ross right now. It just makes too much sense. They're free in drafts. In a managed league, you can always cut them if things don't work out. But you're getting the best offense in football in some people's eyes with the best quarterback in the league, and you're getting a guy in the 19th round that's going to play. How do you say no? Yeah,
he usually goes early 18th, which is there at this level. There's less differentiating, but goes to the 1906, who gets a little bit of value. I always have my updates up just in case anything's breaking. Earlier on the show, I got a Dotson's been traded update, and it was Kevin Dotson. I had a moment.
Somebody tagged me on Twitter. I was like, "Oh no, why did Jahan Dotson get traded? Where is he going?"
And then Kevin Dotson. Okay,
makes a ton of sense.
CJ Stroud's been dicing up the Saints to Nico Collins. So we're gonna let you guys go. Preseason football is on. Go watch that. Next time you'll see me and Terp is either, we don't know exactly the schedule yet, but Tuesday at 7, there's a Fantasy Pros coverage. Next Sunday, we'll be back for our last main event coverage of the year. And then in 2 weeks, 11 days, we will be live at 3:30 p.m. Eastern time covering a $10,000 high society.
No big deal. $10,000. This is the best of the best. A lot of money on the line, and hopefully we'll not be as bozos as we were last year.
I mean, I can't be because I'm just going to go in, even if there's a pick I disagree with. I'm going
to say the same thing I do every day. If I don't like a pick, I'm going to say how bad it is. Hopefully, it just doesn't come back in my face and embarrass me like it did last year. And if it does, oh well.
But no, those guys know what they're doing. So I look at it, it's a good room, so it should be an exciting draft. So we'll get that up for you guys. 3:30 p.m. Eastern time, September 7th. And then obviously, as I said, next Sunday, main event coverage, and the next 2 Tuesdays are Fantasy Pros. So we will see you guys Tuesday or Sunday. You'll at least see probably one of us on Tuesday, probably with Eric Balkman, as he's usually been covering the Fantasy Pros. Thank you to the chat for participating. Happy drafting. Get in your teams at myffpc.com. Those leagues are going to fill up soon. Best ball tournament.
Don't wait too long. These contests will sell out. This last week or so is going to be an absolute, mad dash to the finish with, a bunch of guys who, and some people's eyes think they're dead weight drafted, their first team or their second team that are new to the contest. Maybe you can take advantage of them. So get in there, take your shots, and go get your shot at $1 million.
Yep. $1 million on the line in the main event, $1 million on the line in the Fantasy Pros Championship. Draftathon is coming up next weekend. So hundreds of drafts are going to be going off that weekend. So get in those. We will see you guys on Tuesday for Fantasy Pros coverage. Thanks to the chat one more time, and we'll see you guys then.
See you guys.